So let's talk a little bit about your writing and your podcasting. So, I want to know, at what point did you know that this was going to be a concern for you and that you were professionally going to put out fiction to do with Japan and to publish these podcasts as well? Presumably the fiction came first.
Yes, it did. So the fiction came first. Had the first book, A Robe of Feathers, came out. It was like a small university press. And then this is the beginning of the internet. And, like everyone wasn't reading my book. Well, so maybe I should do it. And I'm not good at talking. I don't really like talking in front of people. And it was an idea. The whole podcast thing was an idea, but it was really hard. But I was one of those things where like, should I do the hard thing? And then my partner happened to be like the first podcaster in Japan or something. So he had the equipment and he knew how to set it all up. And I'm like, all right, I'll try this. And it was just very much for me. And even now it's just like, this is what I would like to listen to if I had like a podcast about Japan or something. And I just kind of overlapped, with what I like to study and the stories I like to write. That makes sense.
What was the name of your partner's podcast?
It was Hello from Japan. And Rich Pav, and he used to go around and just do very slice of life. This is what it's like in Japan. This is, walking down Shinjuku or Makihabara or something. And it was very, very popular in podcasting for dummies, I think. The original one, like he's like actually mentioned in there or something. So, yeah, not what I do.
No. I'm wondering what year did that start? This wasn't meant to
Oh,
accidentally turn into an interview
no,
about your
but
partner,
no,
but
it's
you
really
said
interesting.
he's like the first podcaster in Japan or
Yeah, there
the
was 2
first.
people, he said, that came out at the same time, and it was him and another guy, and he was like, it was like a week, like, I think the other guy might have been like a week ahead of him. But, Rich Pav, Hello from Japan. Oh God, what year would it have been? I have no idea. I'd have to look it up. I'm really bad with years. Oh, I can look it up. I have a computer in front of me, don't I? Da-da-da. Oh, I wish he was here. I could just ask. He's doing editing, ironically enough.
Are you literally looking it up now?
I am. I'm sorry. I'll stop.
No, it's okay. I was just checking, like, we
Well,
hadn't
I'm
all
looking
gone
strangely at the
silent. Yeah.
Come on. Sorry.
I was trying to covertly look it up whilst you were talking, but
I was
my
overtly looking it up.
yeah, my Google skills have failed me, but don't you worry, I might continue to do that a little
Okay.
bit later. But I mean, what what does your writing and your working routine look like at the moment? Because you've got a number of endeavors, and like, are you doing this full time? Is there another job that you have in addition? Like, what is the working day like for you?
I'm very, very poor. Yeah, this is kind of full time. So gosh, it is um I am the most scatterbrained person. I learned what ADHD was like here. Like when I was little, they didn't have such a thing. And now I'm like, yeah, okay, yeah, that might be me. Huh, squirrel? Okay, yeah, okay. So whatever I feel like working on, and I just kind of like for the next day, I'm like, okay, I need to write, 1,000 words on a story. I need to research the next podcast episode. I need to get a blog up for, Uncanny Japan or something. And I just kind of, the day before, write a huge list and then wake up and look at the list and the things I feel like doing, I kind of mark off. And if it's something really important, I put it at the top of the list. This has to be done. And yeah, it's really fun because I'm just doing what I want to do all the time, pretty much. Uh, research, write. Learning to draw. I'm like, oh, I can put a thumbnail on my YouTube channel or something. And yeah, still just kind of scrambling, trying to make enough money, like little side gigs here and there. And hopefully, I'm working on my a novel, like a real novel, finally, instead of short stories. My agent keeps telling me that short stories are nice, but if you really want a following and you really want to sell books, you need to have a novel. So I'm finally doing that, and yeah, again, kind of puzzle pieces coming together after a very long time of being scattered. So hopefully that'll happen sooner rather than later.
Yeah, how long have you been doing this full time for?
Probably about 3 years. 3 years. We COVID. So when COVID hit and didn't want to work outside, because again, I was sick and everything, and really didn't want to go out and be hobnobbing with people. Just decided to stay at home and do what I could do. Got some like the Patreon page, and then writing. What else? It is. It does feel like just like a bunch of little side gigs, looking for the next thing. So yeah, about 3 years full time. And full time just sounds bad because it is. It's like very very poor. It's like if there's in a city there's a studio and sometimes they need someone to record voiceover for a test or something. I'm like, hey, take me. And so they're always pulling me in there. So just getting money that way too. So yeah.
And so, what was it you were doing before COVID and before you went full time?
I was teaching a little bit in a small English, like a little private English school that was really, really cute for a while. And that ended up kind of being weird. The boss wasn't really cool. So that broke away with him and we were gonna start our own little thing here. And then COVID happened. And then it's like, I'm just gonna write and do the podcast and kind of concentrate on that and see if something happens. So a lot of what's it called? Irons in the fire. Like I want to do a visual novel now. I think that would be cool. We're actually working on that. So we got all these things that we're working on, little audio dramas and all kinds of just things, creative ventures we just want to put out there. Um, I like the writing part, and he likes all the behind the scenes techie stuff and the audio stuff. So it kind of works out well. Yeah, I just got to learn how to draw.
Yeah, and despite them being separate pieces, they do all seem to be part of like this wider vision. I mean, they're all deeply ingrained in terms of Japanese folklore and
Mm.
Japanese mythology. And I mean, indeed, after reading the Japan folklore book, I read The Carp-Faced Boy, and I thought, this is like, it is, of course, distinct, but it's almost like it's the same thing, but in a
Right.
different format. Although, my goodness, I must say, when I got to Four Guys Walk Into a Bar, I did not expect that tonal shift. That was like, oh,
Right.
okay, this is a
Can
different
I talk?
flavor entirely.
Can I talk? I actually want to write more in that vein, and that is um, so when my son graduated from high school, so we were kind of like buddies. I had my dog and my son. My husband was living, wherever, and I knew that I was going to have empty nest. Like, oh my God, he's going to leave, and I'm going to be all alone. So I signed up for Clarion West, like this writers, it's like 6-week writer thing, and got in. Don't know how that happened, but got in. Oldest one there, and Cory Doctorow. I think it was his week. So every week you have a different teacher writer, and they teach you and you write. So it's just like full on. You're either writing, you're in class like half the morning, you're writing all afternoon. You have to read other people's story, everyone else's stories. You have to critique them, and yeah, you just don't sleep. But it's like the best experience ever. And it was his week, and it was something like just mixing things up, do something that you've never done before, but you kind of wanted. I don't remember what it is, but I thought omniscient. viewpoint. I've always wanted to do like get into everyone's head. So omniscient and horror and comedy, like again, Kurt Vonnegut. I'm like, if I could do something just horrifying, but also just wacky. And that story came together just a couple days, and I still love it. I mean, it's very dated because the things like, oh, you have GPS on your phone, because back then that was a big deal. Like this is like 2015, but the story itself, I think, is very adorable and sad and weird. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
and
like
you
that
said
story.
you want to do more things kind of in that vein.
Mm-mm.
Is there anything in the works at the moment?
I was thinking, I just got an email from some editor who kind of asked, like, I'm having an anthology about this, and would you like to submit something? And it sounded really good. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to try it again. So I haven't started yet, but I think I am. It's very, writing for me is still, I don't feel I found my voice yet. Like, there's so many, like, is this close third? Is this first person? Is this, you know, uh, tone and all that, and atmosphere and voice. And I still am looking for my voice, I feel. But that one feels so comfortable and just a joy to read for me, um, how the characters interact. So hopefully this next story I'll be able to do something similar, maybe. I don't know. We'll see.
It's interesting to hear you say that you feel you haven't found your voice, because I feel both in the nonfiction book and in the short story collection that you have a very distinct voice. I mean, it's very, I want to say like authoritative, but I'm not sure if
Mm.
that's quite the word I'm looking for. But there's also like a lightheartedness and a playfulness, and one might think that those two terms are almost juxtapositions, but you do it in such a way that is a delight to read.
Oh, thank
So
you.
to me, that feels like somebody writing who's got a strong command and a sense of their voice. But I wonder, a lot of us, we have different facets of our voice. So perhaps it's
Mm.
not that you haven't found your voice, but that you have multiple voices and you're kind of trying to
Um,
explore what are the other sides to it.
I like that. That's so that book was written in 2000 what? Oh, 15, I think. When did it come out?
So
Yeah, it
the
came out.
Carp-Faced Boy
Yeah,
was 2017, I
2017.
believe.
Okay. So I did do a couple. So I didn't write for a long time because of breaking up with the ex and all that stuff was really bad. But then I wrote last year 2 stories, The Buddha Bone, and another one, I forget what it was. But it's kind of that voice, but more stripped away. It's more tight, I think, which I like. I like better. It's so yeah. But then again, like you're right, different facets, but also changing, right? As you change, as you grow. It's been however many years, 10 years or something. So that too, maybe. Yeah, it's getting more comfortable, I think.
Yeah, and
Thank
when
you.
you approach writing something to prepare for the podcast, or when you prepare fiction, or when you prepare a non-fiction piece, what would you say are some of the commonalities, but then also the distinct challenges of each medium?
Ooh. So the podcast, I really, the whole idea with the podcast was kind of like, this is before everyone came to Japan. Like, now there's so many people here. But before it was kind of like, hey, come with me, come to Japan. I'm going to show you this little nook or cranny over here of something very weird that you probably don't know about and you might want to know more about. And it was kind of like almost, second person, almost like you come with me and I'll show you this thing and I'll explain it to you. And I think that has helped me a lot with just the regular writing. The folklore book was difficult just in that with fiction you can do anything, right? Like you write it, you have that shitty first draft, you rewrite it, you take things apart, you put things in. But with the folklore book, everything had to be right, and I couldn't really get words wrong because that would change the facts of the story, right? So that was hard. And then the deadline for that thing was just insane. It was like less than 2 months to actually research and write the whole thing. And I thought I would go nuts. So yeah, that was that. But fiction is probably more of a playground.
I want to
Yeah,
know why the deadline was so tight.
yeah, for real. That's like the one thing. Even with my agent, we're like, "Hey, we got this," because they approached me. They're like, "Hey, we would like you to," and I'm like, "Yeah, sure, that's awesome. I'd love to do that." Oh, and by the way, the first half of the book has to be handed in a month, and I'm like, "Oh, you're fucking." So we said no, and then they're like, "Hey, you want some more money?" And I was like, "Not a lot, but so, that's not going to help my sanity any." But it was the most difficult thing I've ever done, focus-wise, mentally. Like, I had to wake up and just be on, and I didn't wash clothes, I didn't cook, I didn't go for walks, I didn't check the mail, and then, at night I wake up at 2 AM because I can't sleep because I have to check news, and then I stop, okay, I gotta edit. I'm editing on on Google Docs at night, and then, okay, then I sleep a little bit, okay, wake up, okay, I gotta do the research now, and I have to do and, yeah, had I more time, it might have been a little bit different, I'm sure, but for what it was, yeah, it got done. And I don't know why. They were just very keen to. There were some, I don't know, something they want, some kind of deadline they wanted to meet, and to get into some kind of, I don't know, book club or something. I don't remember, but they're like, yeah, if you do, well, I'm like, okay, yeah, sure, I'll do it. But after that, writing a book in a year is like, oh, I can do that. That's easy. Maybe
Yeah,
not.
it's bizarre that they were the ones who approached you and then they imposed this incredible deadline on you. Yeah.
It's crazy. I just got a new a publisher came for little kids, like 8 to 10 years old, and they're something similar, a little bit different. There'll be ghosts in this one and more creation myth, gods and goddesses too. So it's a little bit different, but kind of the same thing, shorter, of course. And their deadline is, I think, 6 months, and they're all apologetic, and I'm like, 6 months, yeah, all right, maybe, I don't know. We'll see. I'm gonna work on that today. But yeah, I'm very. If I have a deadline, I can focus and work. Right. If I don't, it's any old writing a story about one of the stories I think in Carp-Faced Boy about it's kind of a dental horror story. Just going down the rabbit hole of false teeth in ancient Japan and what kind of wood they were made of, and that actually they were the artisans that carved Buddhist statues were the ones who did the false teeth because they were so good at carving that they'd also be on the side dentists and things like weeks of studying this, and none of it gets into the story, but yeah, if I'm not careful, that's all I do. And that's another reason I think I started the podcast is because I had all that extra stuff. Like I researched all this. I'm not going to use it in the story. What do I do with this? It's really interesting. Maybe somebody cares about false teeth in old Japan, and I don't know. So that's how Uncanny Japan came about too.
That's the thing I don't like about research is that you have to know so much about something and you're not going to use it, but you don't want your character to sound like a moron if they're an expert in something.
Right.
And so, and then, so, and you don't want them to like recite passages from Wikipedia, you know,
Isn't that crazy? Yeah.
dentistry, which started in the 16th, it's like you don't want to do that.
Right.
And
Right. Right.
so
Right. Right.
but you have to, it's like you have to do out of 100% research, you're going to use 5% of that. So your character sounds authentic.
Mm-hmm.
Yay.
And
Such fun.
if you just did the 5%, right? Like, oh, I just need this much. The reader could tell, like you said, something's going to be off. They're going to be like, wait a minute, right? So you really do have to have that big base of knowledge to pull out
Mm-hmm.
exactly that little 5% that you're going to, here you go. And that's a problem I have a lot with, and I hate to say this, but reading like books about Japan, like someone who's not lived in Japan, but they're writing about, Momotaro or something. And then I'm like, they get something like little things wrong. I'm like, oh, I wish they went and said, oh, God.
Mm-hmm.
I wish they would have asked me or something like that. But I mean, I get stuff wrong too, I'm sure. But yeah, it's the research. It's fun, and it's also it stops the writing cold.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like you might be in a situation now where rather than you coming to publishers or you pitching projects, you're getting so many offers because you're known as, the person who writes about Japanese folklore, that people are coming more often than not to you. And I mean, how does that affect what you're doing? And does that affect your mindset? And equally, do you have to make a conscious effort to also carve out a kind of creative space for you? So it's like, right, this one is me, this is my project, and to kind of make that time untouchable.
Exactly, all of that. Yeah. So like a year ago, the visual novel. It's like, this is what I'm doing. This is next. I'm doing this, and I did, again, research. I'm researching what's a visual novel. How are we going to do this? What's rimpai? Blah blah blah. Do the draft. I had it recorded. Everything's done. We just start. Okay, let's go. And then the publisher came and said, "Oh, by the way, hey, guess what?" And I'm like, I'm not going to say no to that. Of course, I want to do that. So did that, and then I was like, whew, all right, we can rest. Okay, now I'm going to do the novel. The visual novel is still kind of being worked on. We're working on that. Okay, novel. I got to write my own novel now. Blah, blah, blah. And then I get this another, like, hey, we want to. I'm like, okay, I'll do it. But you're right. I have now like 1,000 words, my words, first thing in the morning, like my whatever, because it's so easy for me to just do anything else except what I need to be doing for me, and not getting any younger. Still have lots of ideas I want to get out there. So yeah. First 1,000 words are mine, and then after that I can just work on whatever's next. But yeah, you're right.
And I think getting to your words first thing in the morning is a smart idea, because then if we carve out this time, hopefully don't even turn our phones on, then we can't get distracted by other things. But if you say, right, my words are going to be in the middle of the day or at the end of the day, oh, that's the danger zone. That
Yes. Yep.
really
Yep.
is.
Yep. Anything can happen. Like, oh, I need to go to the store. That's right. Or, oh boy, that shower needs cleaning. Or yeah, anything will come in. And they're harder words because, like, the folklore book, the one that's already out, and the new one for little kids, it's research, and then it's presenting it in a way that it's fun to read for little kids or whatever. But with mine, I've got this, I got the protagonist is up in a tree or something. It's also a middle grade book. I'm going to write. I have adult novels like horror and everything I want to write, but I want to do this one first because I've been writing 5,000 word short stories forever. So okay, that's a little bit longer than a short story. Middle grade adventure, wacky adventure. Okay, kind of Ghibli-esque. Do that, and then that will be my step to like the really creepy stories I really want to write. So it's not super long, but things happen, and it's like, how do they get into this? How do they get out of this situation? And that's where I really have to think. So morning is better because afternoon it's like,
And I know that we're jumping around a lot in terms of topics, but it's because there's so much
sorry.
that's of curiosity. And I mean, you've mentioned your agent, of course. So I want to know, when did you get your agent? How did you get your agent? Have you had multiple agents in your career? What's the story there?
The agent was funny. So the first book was funny too because I was very what's the word, naive, and just um, took risks. So there used to be a book by Ellen Datlow and Terry Windling, and it was like the year's best fantasy and horror. Every year they came out, and those are my Bibles. Like every year I get those and just read all the stories. So I would go to the introduction. They would talk about different publishers. Like, this publisher is really good. So I'd go to the publishers and I'd read the story. I'm like, that's kind of like what I write. And then who published it? And then I just cold wrote the publisher and said, hey, I got an idea for this book, and here's one of the stories. What do you think? And one hit, like, it was small, like I said, it was like a university press, and the head editor or whatever said, "Oh, yeah, okay, I like that story. What else do you got?" I'm like, "Hold on, I got more." We're writing furiously, and so that worked. But when that happened, I realized, okay, I know nothing about contracts. Again, this is internet's very new, and like just researching that was like there's not much there. So I did another cold, just wrote a bunch of agents that I thought might fit, and said, I got this deal. It's not a lot of money. It's hardly any, but maybe in the future. And picked up Ethan, and he was great. It was funny. Our first talk, like your first agent talk, he called me on the phone, and he's like, I forget what he said, but I did the old, "Hi, I'm fine, and you?" Like whatever the Japanese, like they learn first English, like, "Hello, how are you?" "I'm fine, and you?" or something. And he goes, "Is English your first language?" Like, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's my first language. I'm really, really not good at this talking thing. But he's still with me, and there's been many years where we just didn't talk. And I was just like, he's going to drop me any minute. He's going to drop me any minute now. But recently, things have been kind of finally happening. so we're in contact a lot, which is nice. But yeah, he's like one of the only people I've met that I've been awestruck. Like I've not met a lot of famous people, but when I met him, it was kind of like, wow, cool. This is a guy, it's a mover. I only met him once, mover and shaker. This guy makes things happen. He's John Scalzi's agent too. And John Scalzi's the one that gets those deals that are biggest deal ever, biggest advance ever. So I'm a little peon down here, but I got a hero up there that I'm aiming for.
Just ask your agent, like, can we get a Scalzi deal? Just this once, just one
Just this
Scalzi
one.
is what I'm
We'll be
after
good,
right
right?
now.
You get your percentage, I get mine. Yeah. Scalzi's like, the king. So, but yeah. So, but yeah, that helps. Just calm me down because I'm not good with contracts and dealing with that. He helps a lot.
Yeah, it feels that like a lot of your meeting people and the opportunities have been very serendipitous, and it's almost like there's a spiritual element to that as well. It's like the universe provides you with what you need when you need it.
Wouldn't that be cool? And another one, and another one. This one felt serendipitous. Is I don't know if you know David Dasmalchian from movies, right? So one day I'm sitting there on whatever Patreon, you get the notification like, "Oh, you have a new Patreon. Oh, you have a new patron." Oh, I'm like, "Oh," and I write them and like, "Hi, how are you?" And this one had the name David. I'm like, "There's no friggin' way." So I just kind of left it for a few days. I'm like, "There's no way that this person could possibly be." So a couple days later, I didn't even write hello yet because I'm kind of like, what do I say? But no. And then Instagram, I get a message like, "Hi, this is David Dasmalchian, and I don't know if you know me or not." I'm like, holy shit. I'm like, it is. And then we became friends, and now he's writing a comic called Knights versus Samurai. So good. It's so good. And yeah, he just said, I've listened to your show. The kids love the show. I love your show. And could you be kind of a consultant on some of the Japan part? And hell yeah. Oh yeah, I can do that. And speaking of serendipity, my son lives in Hokkaido. Apropos of they just wanted to get the hell out of the city. So they moved to this bohunk town in Hokkaido, like very, very north. Nobody knows where it is. A couple hundred people in the town. And so they've been there for a couple of years. They're going to move, but so that's happening. No, of course, David doesn't know about that. But anyway, in his story of the Knights versus Samurai, the Knights land in Japan, and he randomly picked a place in Hokkaido. This is where the Knights are going to land. It's like a 30-minute, 45-minute drive from where my son lives. And I'm like, holy shit, David, I'm actually going to visit him, in a month. So rented a car. We all get in the car and we drive there, and you just go to this beach, and it's just like, this is where it happened. This is where David's story took place. And so I'm taking videos and stuff and picking up shells and sending it to him. So yeah, that was very kind of like, he and I have had lots of things like that. Like, yeah, we'll be thinking of something and we'll contact the other one. It's like, I was just thinking of that. So yeah, that book's going to be, or the comic is going to be so good. Excited about that coming out.
Yeah, and I think.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, I was just gonna say that I think David's popularity really blew up last year as well with Late Night with the Devil. So
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm. I've been seeing him since, and the first time that I saw him was in, the Batman,
Mm.
The Dark Knight,
Yeah.
and and I'm sure he had done things before then, but
That
even
was
then,
his
and
first.
his part was a good part. It was small,
Mm.
but he made such an impression. I was like, this guy, I don't know who he is. He has an unpronounceable last name that I can't pronounce, but he's going somewhere. David D. And
Mhm.
then to see that he's like the host of Shudder's or Fangoria's Chainsaw Awards. He and then he's a lead in this film Late Night with the Devil that was, you know, probably a little different than what I expected, but he carried the whole film. And I was like, this guy's good. And then to find out he's a writer and, and all that and into so many different things, he's just a very fascinating person. And the fact
Oh,
that,
he
that you're consulting him, that's, that's freaking tight, man.
that's
That's what I gotta say.
surreal.
That's freaking awesome.
It is so surreal, and he is so nice. He is the nicest damn person. Oh my god, he's nice and he's smart. He's wicked smart. So when we were first talking, I was kind of like, oh, he had my book and everything. So I was like, oh, maybe he wants like advice on writing or something. Oh hell no, he is such an incredible, like, the characters and the way the story unfolds. He's just so good. He's so multi-talented, nice, um, and works his ass off. He's very, very, and I can be lazy. Like I can be like, I'm gonna sit on the couch for a while, and he works so hard, and he's just a good person. So he's kind of my my hero too. But yeah, that was very serendipitous, and yeah, and while working on that too, lots of things happened where we were like, yeah, no way. Okay, I was thinking that too and stuff. So yeah, that'll be fun. It's coming out in September, I think.
yeah,
Hopefully
I'm
here maybe.
definitely gonna pick up a copy of that. I didn't know until this conversation that
Oh,
Knights versus Samurai was even a thing. So
and the artist is an Italian artist who's just incredible too. Yeah, it's gonna be cool.
yeah,
Mhm.
no, this looks a good one. Image Comics, September 24th.
54.
So, I mean, we've mentioned the Book of Japanese Folklore, but we're almost skirting around the book. So, I mean, when the publisher first came to you, what was their vision for the book? Because it has got a very gorgeous aesthetic. It's very meticulously crafted. So I'm wondering, what was it that they said they wanted from you, and how much creative back and forth did you and the publishers have to put this together?
So so Adams Media is like a imprint of Simon and Schuster, and they're kind of like pretty books, like beautiful books, like books almost like small coffee table books. So that was their thing, is to make a very beautiful book. So that was nice because they're hardback, and uh, it's got it's really cute. The day they decided to do the edges in like a golden color, it was decided later, like, oh, we got the budget for it. We're going to do a golden and or yellow or something. And one of my friends said, that's not yellow, that's dreamsicle. And I'm like, ooh, dreamsicle. So, but anyway, so there is a Norse mythology and a Greek one. I think they already had out. So it was just along those lines. They used a different artist, and I knew right away there'd be like 30, like we're going to have, like whatever, 40, 45, forget, 45 characters, and then 30 of them will be illustrated. And I got to pick out, like, this is what a kappa looks like, this is what an oni looks like, and send photos to or pictures to the artist. And then she did her thing. And then there's back and forth, like, maybe more of this, maybe less of that, or that's perfect, or whatever. And then the the format too is kind of like the very beginning is like, what is this creature? And the background, and then kind of a story about it, and then where can you find it today, like in games and movies. It's pretty much Pokemon or something. I think the only thing is when I first started writing it, I started to do it like I do the show, to kind of immerse the person. Like, for example, if you wake up in the middle of the night and you hear something in your bathtub and it's licking the walls, what could it be? And so a lot of them, at the first half at least, I think, were set up like that. And I really liked the way it went. I liked that it was kind of a setup. It got you in there, and then it explained what it was. But the editor was like, no, 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 you have to tell what it is right away. I'm like, oh, but that ruins the surprise. So some of them are kind of like shifted around. Like the chapters are like that was supposed to go up here, but I had to move it. But they were really good. They were very good with the back and forth. Any questions I had, the editor was so sweet. And I think because it was such a tight deadline, like not daily, but how's this, and back and forth. So yeah, it was just a very surreal 2 months.
Yeah, and I
Lots of
mean,
chocolate
traditionally
afterwards.
with a book, we would send the entire draft, then we would get notes, then we would rewrite. It sounds, based on what you're saying, you would almost send like a kind of chapter by chapter. So
It did. The first one, they just said to pitch it. So they said, okay, kappa, send a chapter of how you would write the kappa one. So I sent that, and then that was okay. And they're like, okay, do them like that. And then they're like, okay. And 1 month we want 30 chapters. Like, okay. And then I sent them, and actually it was that time. So it wasn't really chapter by chapter. It was a big chunk, because that was when they said, "Ooh, we don't want you to set it up. We actually want you to tell exactly what the creature is, so no one's confused. Like, an oni looks like an ogre and he's got horns. Not, what if you were walking in the forest and you heard a sound?" So I had to, kind of change that up a little bit, but they were great.
I mean, I guess an advantage for you of not being able to set it up like that is it really does then distinguish the book from the podcast. And I mean, that means that
Yeah.
they can complement one another. And what one would certainly hope that those who have read and enjoyed the book then go to the podcast if they weren't aware of it before. And well, my goodness, if they do that, they have a lot of hours of listening ahead of them.
Yeah, a couple of years. Not as long as you guys. Yeah, just I think 7 or 8 years. Yeah.
Just a mere 7 or 8. So basically,
Years.
between us, we've got a couple of decades of listening for people.
Sit down, everybody. Put on your headphones. Yep.
And you'd said before that when you started out the podcast, and of course, when you started out writing, there were less people in Japan, whereas now there are a lot more people. But I do love that in spite of that, there aren't really any rivals to Uncanny Japan. You have carved out that space, that niche. Maybe
Cool.
you do it so well that everyone's like, nope, you are untouchable. We're not going to
No.
go there.
Yeah, thank you. But I kind of feel like there's Koabana, right? So she's horror, and she's so good. I mean, she's got that, right? So I wanted to do more horror, and I always thought like, oh, maybe I should do that. But Tara's got that. That's great. And I kind of feel sometimes that, I like to do Buddhist things. I like to do language things. I like to do creepy things. I like to do funny things. So sometimes I almost feel like I'm just juggling things I like at the moment. The one that's coming out next is a caterpillar cult. It's about a literal cult that worshipped a caterpillar, and it's just so nuts. I'm just like, oh, this is great. I just have to talk about it. So yeah, a lot of it is very selfishly things I've never seen or heard about, and I'm like, oh, I bet people would think that's kind of goofy or scary, or yeah, if it entertains me, huh?
I think, though, that's what we've got to do when we're creating art. Like, we've got to do something that entertains ourselves or that taps into our interest. And, we've got to trust if it's something that we're excited about and we're passionate about, not only are there going to be other people that are also passionate about it, but it's a kind of infectious enthusiasm.
I the more people that reach out and like, email or message or whatever, that are interested in the same things, it just blows my mind. I'm like, really, you like that too? Like, that's awesome. So yeah, I kind of, that was the most surprising thing, I guess. I don't know. I did the podcast. I kind of thought people might listen, and I never thought people would actually reach out and say things, and just oh my gosh. I don't want to say too much about her, but just people who have like gone through really horrid things in their life. But I've always wanted to go to Japan, but this happened in my life, and but I listened to your show, and I'm getting through it. And then that was 6 years ago, and now she's married and she's happy, and it's like, so it's just kind of like forming little connections with these people that I'll never meet, but they're just so beautiful. And I really didn't expect that. I don't know what I expected from doing the show, but that's my favorite part by far, is just the people who reach out and say anything at all. They're just so with all the news, it's like, oh God, why are we still on this planet, kind of thing. And then someone will reach out and say, my son is 4 years old, and he walks around with a plate on his head and says he's a kappa because he loves your show. I'm like, oh really? I'll send him a sticker. So, yeah, people are the best. That's what I'm trying to say.
And I think there's a real intimacy and a connection when listening to a podcast. And because, that the person is literally in your ear, it's more personal than if you're just reading an article. So we do find that we almost have this pseudo relationship with the host of the podcast that we're listening to.
That's something else I took for granted. I didn't realize so much. I don't listen to a whole lot of podcasts. I do when I walk and stuff, but yeah, discovering that too. And yeah, I get it. I love it. It's so sweet.
Well, I'm wondering, in terms of the book, and this is completely indulgent, but which creature would you most and least like to encounter?
Least Bimbo Gami, the poverty god. Yeah, right. And I think it's more my like trauma from my mother-in-law. If you do things wrong, the Bimbo, the god of poverty, is gonna. It's like what do they call it? Like two sides of a coin or two sides of a piece of paper. Like everything's good, flip. It's like, oh God. So yeah, that one doesn't look like much, but boy, no, thank you, no Bimbo Gummy. Most like to. I'm into Tengu recently. I don't know what it is. They just like have everything going for them. They're cool. They're martial artists. They fly. They have wings. They dress like just awesome. Doing a little mini audio drama now about a Tengu. So I'm kind of like really into those. Red-faced, tall geta shoes, everything.
Yeah, did you ever read the Graham Masterton book? I believe it was the early 90s, literally called Tengu.
No, but where's my pen? I'll look that up.
Yeah, I think that was, to me, it feels like one of the books that really put him on the map, but I might be heavily prejudiced because it was one of the first books I read by him, so I'm not sure how much that is reality and just my own personal experience. I don't know if Bob is a Graham Masterton scholar who might be able to say more on that one.
No, I read, and it's been so long that I cannot remember anything about it. But the only thing that I've read by him was The Manitou. And that was in very formative years. Checked it out at the library. What is this? I was going through everything I could get my hands on, because after discovering, Stephen King and Peter Straub, and it's like, well, who's Ramsey Campbell? Who's Graham Masterton? Who's all these who's James Herbert? So you start going through these, you know, and then when those books were checked out, it's like, who's Tanith Lee? Who's, you know, so, you know, who's Shirley Jackson? And you don't know. And then you're mad because you're like, oh shit, I read Shirley Jackson in school. They made us read that stupid story called The Lottery because you're like, you know, you're 14 and you didn't get it, you know, or you're 15. And then, you know, then you read The Lottery in your 20s and you're like, oh my God, you know.
It's so well written.
My experience with Masterson is I've read the one book and I don't remember it. That's more on me than the book because, I mean, supposedly it's a classic. So I should revisit it.
Is that the movie from Manitou? I mean, right?
Yeah, they made it into a film, which I've never seen.
That was one of my very early, what the hell?
I heard it's a what the hell film.
Yes. I don't remember how old. I need to look up when that movie came out because to this day, I ask people like, you know, my partner, I'm like, have you ever seen Manitou? And this thing comes out of here and it's like, and it's like, oh. No, I haven't seen that. But you're the first person I've ever heard mention it. So I didn't even know it was a book. I just thought it was like a screenplay that got made into a movie.
And no, I think
the book came out in 76 and the movie was 78.
Okay, 78.
Which is a fairly quick adaptation. I wish that they happened that quickly these days, but the business has changed.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a movie. Ooh.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean something that you've touched on. I did love how you tied each mythology, each creature into pop culture, because then, you know, that's giving people, particularly those who aren't as familiar with Japan, reference points. And so you mentioned things like Yokai Watch and like Demon Slayer, and my personal favorite, like Silent Hill.
Silent Hill. There's so many. It was intimidating because, you know, you got this many words, right? Just like in popular culture now, and there was just so much. Each one had so many, and it's like, okay, I can only, you know, do. I was like, I don't know, 50 words or 75 words or something, and I didn't realize I live here. I don't live in the States. Just how prevalent, you know, these yokai in games and manga and movies, and for Christ's sake, what was it? Jeans? There's like Momotaro jeans or something. There's all kinds of things out there that I did not realize how everywhere they are. Yeah, I wish I could have put more. I think some people were upset, like, "Oh, you didn't mention." I'm like, "I'm sorry." I know.
When I was reading the book, and I mean, I'm coming from a totally uneducated about Japan situation, so I'm reading this book and I'm looking for the entities and things that I've experienced. And so, like, what this book has done, because I was fascinated by these creatures, but at the same time I'm like, and then I'll see the pop culture reference. And after I go through the whole book, I'm like, they didn't mention Ju-on one time.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, well, there's a reason for that. Okay. Because if you mention Silent Hill and all that, it's like, okay, so there has to be a reason. So it forced me to take the time to actually look up what that was. And I'm like, that's why it wasn't mentioned, because that is from the spirit realm, to put it in very, very elementary terms. And we're dealing with things that are creatures that are folklore. And so there's I guess the difference between paranormal and supernatural. So your book kind of deals with the folklore, kind of a little bit more of a kind of supernatural in a way, but more not of the spirit realm.
Yeah,
and
that
so
was yeah. Go ahead.
It was but it was educational because it led me into my own research. And when you can do that, to me, that's where, because the book, the concepts from the book linger on and make you think about and make you curious about the different things. And so I guess thank you. Yes,
Oh,
because now
thank
I
you.
know
Yeah.
I've learned something. I've learned a difference between something in a folklore that I was totally new to.
Mm-mm. Yeah, and so many got cut. Like at the beginning, I pitched like I think like 20 different creatures, and we did. Will ghosts be included? Because if you do ghosts, there's a lot, and then you can do the old Ju-on and all these the J horror, the Ring, and who is Sadako, what is she, and it just got so much. They're like, okay, let's just keep it to the yokai, and they wanted kind of legendary heroes, so a couple, Momotaro and Kintaro and that. But yeah, that's so deep right there too, and so fascinating. Just
But the yokai is very deep and fascinating as well. I
mm-mm.
mean, there's
There's so much.
no doubt there. There's some like when you mentioned earlier, and I'm probably not going to remember the name, but the bathtub liquor
Oh yeah.
that
Okay, no.
creeped me the hell out. That was like
What the? Yeah. They're just so
it's
creative, right?
icky, creepy, icky, creepy.
They're just so. I just think like how creative people used to be, and I just imagine. That's my whole thing. Is like I imagine. Okay, there's no electricity. You got candles. You've got oil lanterns. You got the flickering, shadows on the wall at night, and you're telling stories, or you hear a sound, or even like what was it? Laiju, like is a thunder beast or something, a lightning beast. And back in the day, there's ball lightning, and I've never seen personally, never seen ball lightning, but had someone seen ball lightning, like what's that? And then okay, it's and then they just make this story about this beast that's actually a beast that shoots out lightning and jumps around and destroys things, and it's just like the creativity. I just It's so old, but it's fresh, right? Nowadays,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what kids do.
It's fascinating that it's stuck too. The oral tradition is
Yes,
strong. Is so strong.
and in art and no and kabuki play, and it's just still here. And I go back. I was exactly like you, Bob. With we have Paul Bunyan in the States, and we have Johnny Appleseed, and then at least in Europe, you've got fairies and you've got all kinds of cool things going on there, but Japan just, held on to their little creatures and still holding on to them. So I think that's very honorable.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that you cut so much and you made the
Mm.
conscious decision to not include ghosts, does that mean that there could be a follow-up or there could be a second book, hopefully without a 2-month deadline?
I have this back of my mind dream to work up the table of contents and kind of work on some. And after I get like a good solid footing, to pitch the idea to, to one of these editors, I was saying, hey, you know what? There could be a part two with the more obscure ones. I think there'd be enough to fill up another book. I do. And if it was a longer deadline, even better. I don't know. I have no idea. That's totally a dream right there. I have no idea. I'm sure they have other things on there. They have other countries they have to go to, but I'd like to do it.
And with this book too, you narrated the audiobook. So how did that come about? Because it's quite, I think, unusual for Simon and Schuster to have had the audio rights, but for you to have still been able to narrate it.
I don't. I'm pretty. Uh, I'm not a fighter. I'm pretty much whatever. I fought for that. It's like I woke up one day and they're like, "Well, here's the people we want to read your book," and I was like, "What? Here's the people you want me to choose one of these people to read my books?" I read, and they were nice. They were good, but there's a pronunciation thing. So I just again pitch. I just said, "Hey, listen, this is who I am. Here's my best shows. This is how I read. This is what I can do for you." And no, I don't have a real studio, but hey, this sounds really good, doesn't it? And my agent and I, we were talking about it, and he's like, "Yeah, let's pitch it." So I pitched it to him, and it took so long. Every day I was just like, "Oh, please, 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 please." And then finally they're like, "Yeah, okay, let's do it." And then the best part was after we did it, and again, my partner does all the audio, so he was doing all, bless his heart, all the mistakes I made and all that, and sent it to them. And then there's the pickups, like all the mistakes they say. No, you need to redo this, redo this. we waited. It was like over 4th of July or something, and we had to wait. And then they're like, no, everything's good. You don't have to fix anything. We're like, really? Like, we don't have to fix anything? So yeah, that was, I really wanted to, and they were very kind and let me do it. So hopefully the new little book for kids too, I can read that one as well. We'll see. I like reading.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense. I mean, particularly with your background. So I'm glad that they, allowed that to happen and you won the fight.
I won the fight. I even had like patrons and friends saying, write little, if she reads the book, I'll buy 2 copies. Yes. Okay. And here's a list of people fighting for me too. So yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, it's like I'm not threatening you, but here are some angry
Yeah.
messages from my patrons as to what might happen if I don't get to read the book.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. Yeah, it worked out. Sure.
And talking about future books, I mean, one of the creatures that seems to come up often as, if not your favorite, a creature close to your heart is, of course, the wolf. So I'm
Mm.
wondering, is there a book on the wolf? Is there a kind of future project that you might be doing? Because it seems to be often forgotten. I mean, particularly, you know, with the kitsune, with the fox that gets
Yeah.
so much exposure, but the poor wolf doesn't get a
Nothing.
lot.
I know that. I don't even know how. I think it was my son's girlfriend that first told me. She said there was auction or something. It was kind of creepy, but she said that she was at some auction online or something, and they were. It's like a wolf jaw, like the mandible, and it's a good luck charm or something. But it's going for like thousands of dollars or something. She goes, yeah, back in the day, it was an actual religion, a cult, and people worshipped it. I'm like, what? So then down the rabbit hole, like, oh my god. And then I have a friend, an older gentleman who his daughter, this is his best story ever. His daughter was born, and when she was very little, again, one of those things that no one bats an eye at, she said she kept crying. She was cried all the time, and she cried, and like, what's wrong? What's wrong? And it was the dogs at the door, or something, or the dogs in the hall, or the dogs following me. It was always a dog. Anyway, they took her to a shrine or a temple. I forget what it was, probably a shrine. And they said, oh, she's possessed by a kitsune. There's actually a bad kitsune that is attached to her. And so my friend says, well, what do we do? And well, go take her to the wolf shrine up in the mountains near here. And you get a special amulet and pray for her and everything else. So I was like, okay, all that is wow. Like, I got to process that. But also, there's a wolf shrine around there. So he told me where it was. And we went. And it was you know how roads are here, just like no one travels these roads, and they're single lane, and they're falling away, and there's landslides. I don't know how many hours it took to get there. It wasn't super far. It was just all windy and just trying to find it. And it was just gorgeous. Like, nobody was there. There's these, 1,000-year-old trees and the old wolf statues that don't look like kitsune foxes. Like, they're different. And just the energy, like, it's really cool on the top of the mountain. These wolves are watching you. Yeah, and I was sold from that. I'm like, okay, I need to know more about this wolf. But yeah, I can write a book about wolves. Challenge accepted. And crows. I like crows too.
Yeah, there you go. So if publishers are listening, then they know what to come to you about next.
My email is.
But I mean, what is something about living in Japan that you wish you had known sooner that would have made your life easier?
Ooh. Ah. I wish I had known sooner. Ooh. Probably just language, like really getting the language and really slowing down and it's easy. So when people first come to Japan, I'm hearing this a lot now. It's kind of like Disney, like, oh, Japan's the perfect place to live. Everybody wants to live in Japan. Oh, it's just like a manga. It's just like an anime way. And it's not. It's very, very difficult. It's extremely difficult. And you get here and it's like all Disneyland. And then you have that year. And then it's like, oh my gosh, homesick. Oh, this is terrible. What am I going to do? And a lot of people go home. Where was I going with this? But just instead of trying to fight everything, like I did, and I don't know if everyone does, but you just kind of like, America, we have cheese. In America, we can wear shoes in the house. And in America, something so I can go out, and look like this and nobody stares at me because I didn't brush my hair today. And, everything's like wrong and I'm just fighting everything, is just kind of to open up and say, okay, there's a reason that, I've worn this shirt for 3 days and people are kind of, most people don't do that or something. So there's just kind of, why does my mother-in-law say, don't do this or don't do that, or, and just dig. There's just the history so long and the culture so deep. And instead of me coming up and fighting everything and saying it's wrong, I can't deal, it's just like, you know what? Open up and just say, okay, what is it? Why is it like this? And, I can agree or not agree. That's either or, but to know the reason for something just takes the sting out of everything. Because I know so many bitter people that live here, as long as I've lived here, they still don't really speak the language and they're angry and they, everything in Japan does it wrong or something. It's just like, but all countries, there's good, there's bad, there's things that are done right, there's things that are done wrong. You just, don't fight. Just kind of learn, I guess. Could have done that earlier.
Yeah, I never fully understand when I meet people that live in Japan but seem to really hate it. And then, well, you can move. You don't have. I know that some people will have circumstances that make it logistically harder, but quite a lot of people, it's like there aren't actually these circumstances, and
Right.
they're angry and they're complaining about Japan. And, you know, for me, I don't think there's any country that is the perfect country, but Japan is the best fit for me right
Right.
now.
Right.
What's
Exactly.
perfect for you in the season of life that you're in, and that's the way to go about it. But if I felt that I was deeply unhappy, we'll, we'll look at how I can become happy, and that can include, getting out of the situation. But
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I feel it can be human nature to just want to complain about things. And it's like, are you really unhappy, or are you just looking at something to moan about?
Right. Right. And those people kind of tend to group together and just like a self-perpetuating and this and that, and it's just like, okay.
Yeah. But
Yeah, but you're exactly right with that.
yeah, I mean that there are many wonderful things about living in Japan, and of course there's probably going to be some things where it's like, that's not quite, what we would prefer, but it's weighing it up. you know.
Yep.
Well, then I suppose on that note, what are your favorite things about living in Japan?
Ooh, I like. Ooh, I should have like just on hand. I've I do like that I'm really into temples and shrines, and I do like that. Like I was talking about, like the earth, like the ground, like that everything has a history. You can go for a walk, and there's a statue or there's a rock or there's something, and there's just all this just layers of history, and what happened here. I do like that. I get excited just going and seeing temples is my thing. Going up in the mountains and seeing temples, I like that. Um, yeah, and I have my own like just little niche life here that's just so comfortable and maybe a little insulated, but that's fine. I'm good. I have my neighbors and they're sweet. No real selfishness. Like there's not a lot of people that come out, like when I go back home, I feel like, okay, I don't know if I'm American anymore because these people are loud and they're at me and they're telling me things, like they're telling me I'm doing things wrong and I'm not even bothering them. Like, what? And here, yeah, you just kind of, everyone has their little space, and there's good things and bad things about that. But yeah, you're not being preached at or anything, and you take care of other people, they take care of you. People notice a lot, like they do. Very observant, which is kind of fun. So yeah, it's a very slow life.
Yeah, it's interesting how living in a place for a while can almost shift your identity. And I mean, I found the periods of my life where I wasn't living in Japan after having lived in Japan for the first time. I had something that I can only describe as a kind of homesickness and a longing for Japan, but I never get that about the UK.
Isn't that
Yeah.
interesting? I get it for cheese. That's about it. Like
I
every once
mean
in a while.
that is fair enough. I mean, you can get some cheese in Japan, but you know, it's not of the quality or it's very expensive. I mean,
Yeah.
Europeans and in the UK, we do
Oh,
take our cheese game pretty seriously. So,
yes.
you know, it's low crime. People are
Yeah.
kind. People are less selfish, but
Mm.
less cheese. And for some people, that could be no, that's the deal breaker.
Right, right, right.
I'm
Yeah, it
going
really
back to the
Yeah, I
depends.
didn't
country with good cheese.
I
Yeah.
didn't know about the no cheese thing.
That there is some
There is,
cheese,
there
it's
is.
just
It's just,
not.
it's not like
I
you don't go
mean,
and you have
like,
like loads of cheese.
yeah, because and I live in Texas, so you hear the train,
Oh, that's what
yay!
that is.
But man, I gotta have cheese, and I'm not like a cheese connoisseur or anything like that, but just the thought of things without
I'm not.
cheese, it's
Gotta
like,
make
do you want a
sacrifices.
hamburger? No, I want a cheeseburger.
And that's right.
you know,
And lots. I want it
do
running off.
you do you want your pizza without cheese? No, I've got to have the mozzarella cheese on the pizza. So I mean, I'm just I don't know if I could go without cheese.
I think you can get cheese that is good enough for putting on hamburgers or putting on pizza. It's just if you know, want to have a cheese and wine night, now
Mm.
you might be disappointed. But the standard basic cheese, it's okay, Bob. I mean, come on over.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's
He
get you
wants
a
to come
pizza and a cheeseburger. Let's make the
visit.
whole
Well, if
visit
I'm
cheese
going to
oriented.
Japan, I want to eat Japanese food. That's
You
Oh, we
can
that's
got
do
lots.
that too. That's the
Yes,
it's
beauty.
just
yes.
yeah. It's just amazing that you got a whole country that makes their food without cheese.
No, this,
It's like,
this is a misconception that has
There
gotten
is.
wildly out of
What
hand.
did I start? I'm so sorry. I just started something.
Yeah,
But the food is also another good reason, right?
yeah. So that's not true that they do have cheese in their dishes.
they do.
Okay,
Okay.
Yeah.
cool. Okay.
Well, maybe Theresa is arguing
No, you're right. There's some. Yeah,
some.
but you're not going to get a good like wedge of Parmesan that you can just eat like this with a bottle of white wine. And
Yeah,
not that I do that,
Yeah.
but if I wanted to do that, I could.
yeah. Well, you
Yeah,
don't do it because you
I
can't.
can't do it. But when I go back
That's the
home, when I
problem.
visit, when I go back to the States, yeah, cheese. It's
Yeah.
get a cheese, a really good craft beer, stuff like that. But
Mm.
sacrifices. Yeah, it's fine. I don't need to be eating like cheese and craft beer. Like that doesn't need to be my life. So yeah, once a year is fine. Good. I'll take low crime and how many times have I left my windows open, my car with the keys in it, and all that stuff, doors open, and fine. So I'll take that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
luckily I haven't left my keys in the car, which would be unfortunate because the bloody thing auto locks. I'd be in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, yeah, Duke. I have an old car. I have one of the old
There you go.
one that you walk away from it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, what advice would you give to your 18-year-old self? It can't be cheese related. putting
I
a
can't be
stop to any more cheese talk.
Did I talk about spare ribs? No. Okay. 18-year-olds. Okay. So when I decided very young that like I want to be a writer, I want to write like I want to make people feel like Stephen King made me feel. Um, and I wrote crappy little stories. And then my father is very strict. He's kind of intense. He's very intense. And I remember, do you remember the scene in, oh, what was it? Not Goodwill Hunting. Captain, My Captain.
Is that
Ah,
Dead Poets Society?
thank you.
Yes.
Dead Poets Society, right? And I think it was Neil. And he goes to his dad and he's like, Dad, this is, he's so scared of his dad, but he goes and like, Dad, I want to be an actor or whatever. And his dad's like, yeah, oh, hell no. Yeah. I did that. Like I got the gumption and I go and I'm like, Dad, we need to have a talk. I mean, I'm going to university soon. I'm 18 years old and I want to study to be a writer. And he told me, like, no way in hell are you going to be a writer. You're going to be, something that makes money and whatever you do in life, you're going to have to write. So don't. And it just gutted me. And I didn't write for a very, very long time. I just was like, yeah, okay. I read, but it wasn't until I was here and dealing with the mother-in-law and all the superstitions and trying to make sense of life around me that I started writing again. I'm like, yeah, you know what, darn it, I could have done this years earlier and been so much better by now. But just have more, follow my gut more, like when he said no, just to kind of say yeah, okay, but do it anyway, because I just totally gave up. Like it just threw me. And I just think of all those years, like I could have been studying how to writing and getting better and better. Now I feel like I'm playing catch up with all that. So yeah, hang in there, Terry. Do it anyway. Don't listen to
Yeah, yeah.
Dad.
But as the kind of counterpoint to that, I mean, if you'd have been so wired in on your writing, then you might have not studied Japanese as hard as you did, or you might not have found all these interesting things out. So I feel that, like, often as writers, the time where we're not literally writing is not time that's wasted because we're absorbing all of these experiences and we kind of need something to draw upon to be able to write about in the first place.
I like that. Yeah. Okay. I would have told myself, when you move to Japan, you need to start a cheese factory. You'll
Oh
make
no.
all the money in the world.
Oh no.
Get the foreigners. They'll come.
I I banned talk of cheese.
You did.
Apparently
You
my
did.
authority is meaningless on this podcast
Is it
this week.
lunchtime? Is that what we're, oh, okay, never mind. It's starting to make
The
sense now.
guest rules.
Yeah, yeah, been overruled.
But okay, I'm gonna do one more. I'm gonna stop. I have a friend. Where is she from? She's from the States, but I think she's Greek back there. Anyway, she literally went to Okinawa and started a cheese factory. She's just has the best life. She has like a farm now with goats and horses. So I'm just saying, it all comes around.
And there you go.
I
Okay,
know.
so this isn't even a joke. You literally have a friend who started a cheese factory in
And she wins
Okinawa.
awards, and yeah, it's just yeah. So anyway, that's nothing to do with anything, but yeah.
That
Uh,
is cool.
It's cool.
it's nothing to do with writing. It's nothing to do with horror. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll let that go. I'm done with cheese now.
What is a place in Japan that you haven't visited that you would most like to visit?
Ooh, um, a place. The big dream is to get a van, a high ace. I already know what kind it's going to be. Deck it out, put solar panels on the top, air conditioning, refrigerator, and just travel. Um, Literally last night, my friend who visited from Tokyo, he's French, and he did that. Like I mentioned it once on one of the podcasts, and I never talked to him before, and he wrote me, and he's like, "Oh my God, I am doing what you want to do." So sometimes when he's traveling around, he stops by, and it's nice too because in Japan your houses are small, and it's kind of hard to have someone stay as a guest. So turns on the air conditioning, sleeps in his van, and we stay up all night talking. But yeah, but he showed me it's just like the dream is to just get in and drive and take video and pictures and study like little known folk tales in some tiny town, and yeah, just kind of be a vagabond for a while. So the answer would be everywhere, but specifically down south. I
Yeah.
would like kind of go to the Kyushu area, and because he just got back from there, and he was saying about all the cool stuff. He's like, so much came from China, and it's just like, he went to just lots of neat stuff there. So right now, Kyushu in my van.
Yeah, I
I'm like,
visited Kyushu for the first time only a few weeks ago, but
oh,
I did not have the kitted out van, which may have enhanced the experience even further. But yeah, we went to Hakata and Nagasaki and
oh.
Arita and that general area. And, we've obviously got to go back again because there's so much more to
That's what he kept
do.
saying.
But it was a brilliant preview of the place, and I was very taken by it,
Ooh, I really want to
almost
go.
instantly. But
That's what he said.
to return to this van idea,
Oh yeah.
so your friend is he living in Japan? Of course, I know you said that he's French, but I'm British, you're
Yeah.
American. We're allowed
Yeah,
to
yeah,
live
yeah. You were
in
allowed to, yeah,
Japan. So is he living here? And if so, I mean, do you have to have some sort of permit for for like pulling up your van? Is he a
right?
permanent resident? It's like I'm intrigued by this
Questions.
whole van idea.
So yeah, isn't it great? So he is, I think he's been here like 38 years. I've been here like 35, 36. So a little bit longer than me, a couple years older than me, married to a Japanese woman, works what was that called? Online, so he doesn't have to be in the office all the time. His job is actually doing like video and all kinds of stuff for TV. He's worked for the TV, and his channel is, what is it called? Bura Bura Japon, and he does festivals. So he's so smart, so wonderful. So he just planned it all out. You can. He's got a drone, so he's got the license for the drone. He does all the research beforehand. He finds out where to park. I guess they have places you can park with good Wi-Fi, so he can work. Sometimes he goes. It's great. He goes the day before a big festival, meets everybody there who's setting up, kind of makes friends, and then he goes, is it okay if I tag along? And he's just right in there. So he's got all these cameras set up and stuff. He's got the audio, and I think he's got 2 videos up now. Uh, that are just, and again, really deep dive into the culture, like things I'd never heard about. Like one is as a chess game, or it's a Go or a shogi or something, where they use people like dressed as samurai and different things, and they actually move around them. I didn't know that was a thing, but he goes there and just spends weeks working from his van and living the life. And he said his blood pressure goes way down when he's out on the road. So it's just, it's yeah, it's perfect, because I had this like vague idea of a dream, and then he comes and he just shows it to me. He's like, "This is what mine looks like." I'm like, "That's what I want. Now I need the money to buy the thing to do the dream." So that's where I am.
Yeah, when he came to you, did you feel conflicted? Because on the one hand, it's awesome. On the other, it's like, you stole my dream. What's happening?
True story. When he first said that, I thought, I'm like, oh, and then when he came back, but he's been doing it for years before I even mentioned it. So I was like, okay, it's just, he had it first. It's like the 100th monkey thing. Like we both had the same idea, but he had it first, and but yeah, and he does it in French too. So I'm like, there's no overlap there too. And he does matsuri mostly, so he's in the the festivals. And I don't really want to be in festivals. I'd rather go to like old shrines with stories behind them, or ghostly places or something like that. So we're a little bit different, similar, but not overlapping too much.
Yeah, I think a lot of, what we've been talking about is kind of going back to always following your passion and following your
Mm,
curiosity. And I mean, you said correctly, there's more people from the West coming to Japan these days. And So, of course, perhaps the boat, as it were, has sailed in terms of people wanting to put content out that's just a kind of vlogger, welcome to Japan. This is the snack in the convenience store, what I will term as a generalist.
Mhm.
But if you've got a very specific passion or a niche, there are plenty of opportunities. And there's an abundance of different topics and things to cover. So it's something I'm very aware of, because I've got different curiosities and obscure things. So it might be in the future that I even start a kind of offshoot that would be completely different to anything that we're talking about. But
With a van decked out.
there could be a van,
Yeah. Wouldn't
could
that be
be.
cool? You could be
Yeah.
like messaging each other, "Hey, where are you? I'm on the Tome, and I'm going here, and I'm going here." That'd be cool.
Yeah, yeah, but you've got to get your van next because it's like, look, you've already had somebody show you the dream, so
Right, right,
it's
right,
like,
right,
right, you've
right.
got
That's the
dibs on the
next.
van.
Yeah, it's the next step. Yes, we'll
But
figure it out.
I wonder, what is something that you should be kinder to yourself about?
Ooh, kinder. Oh, I know. Uh, because of the near-death thing, I've had a couple near-death experiences, and the cancer and everything. I'm very in Japanese, aseteru. Like I'm very like I have to get stuff done. Like there's not much time. Like I don't know when North Korea is gonna, I just gotta and I'm very a little bit anxious about like getting as much done as I can instead of like, just being calm and concentrating on one thing. I'm like, okay, I gotta do a visual novel. Okay, I gotta do an audio drama. Okay, I gotta do the next podcast. I gotta write a book. I gotta write another book. I gotta do this. And all these things that I just feel I have to do, and that time is very limited. And I should really just not stop, but more enjoy the process, probably. Um, that definitely. Yeah, I beat myself up a lot. If I sit on the couch for too long doing something else, I'm like, I could have been writing. I could have been reading that book that's going to help me do something. And yeah, I need to just chill.
Yeah, I think it's very natural for all creatives to beat themselves up for, the time that isn't spent creating. But I mean, I would say two things to that. Firstly, even though I don't practice what I'm preaching nearly as much, like downtime is important. It is important for not only refueling the creative well, but also for health. You've got to
Mm.
have some of that. And then I suppose just the more practical response is if you catch yourself not working or procrastinating at a time when you think you should have been working, it's like, okay, well, that time has gone. You're
Mm.
never going to get it back. There's no sense in now filling it with negative energy and berating yourself. So you can make the conscious decision to start working at that point, or you can say, you know what, I still need to recharge,
Mm.
but just do it in a kind of guilt-free way. People feel guilty. They're down on
Mm.
themselves too much. And it's like, look, we're all trying our best. We're trying to do what we can do. Sometimes we fall short, but that's okay. That means that is what we needed at that point. So
Mm.
yeah,
Oh, I love that.
everyone should just, be a little kinder in their own criticism to themselves. Because often we will have this negative self talk that we would
Mm.
never say to another person, but for some reason we say it to ourselves.
Yes, very true. I'm gonna print that out and put it on my wall.
There
That's
you
perfect.
go.
Yeah.
By all means, yeah. Well, where can our listeners connect with you?
Um, if you look up Uncanny Japan, I'm Instagram, Facebook, Blue Sky, all the like try to hit the big social medias. Um, or Theresa Matsuura, same. Both have websites and contact forms, and then I try to put stuff out on social media. I'm not very good at it because I'm just private, kind of. So yeah,
Yeah, I think as well, we only have so much time in the day, and it's often something I think about, and it's like, look, do I want to be a social media guy, or do I just want to be a writer?
mm,
And the main things that I want to spend my time on are writing,
mm.
getting better at Japanese, podcasting, and exercise. But there's kind of a caveat by want. It's like I want to be healthy and live a long time. Therefore, I
I
do
need to.
these things like exercise for that reason.
Right.
But I
Yeah.
enjoy
So
writing and podcasting much more than I enjoy working out.
true. Same.
All
Yes.
right. Well, do you
Yeah.
have any final thoughts for our listeners and viewers?
Final thoughts, everybody. Um. Well, kind of like what we were talking about, like following your passion, like that's kind of been a through line. Like we've been all over the place. I'm sorry, that's the way. I'm sorry to drag you through everything, but yeah, the through line, just kind of follow your passion. It could be writing, it could be podcast, it could be making movies, anything, and looking for kind of connections and the puzzle pieces and how they fall together. Because a lot of times, if you kind of stop and look, it's like, okay, yeah, that happened that way for a reason, like you were saying. And yeah, I think that's good. And be kind to yourself and others. Not very good at that, am I?
All right. Thank you so much for
Thank
chatting with us.
you. So
Yes.
nice to meet both of you.